These straight men will never fully embrace you. They have so much anxiety around seeming gay, etc. Let's be honest, most men's makeup brands are either forgettable, really cringe, or trying really hard to portray this manly image. That got me thinking, what is it exactly that makes these men's makeup brands so off-putting and led to most of them pretty much failing? That's what we're diving into today, along with what men's makeup brands should be doing, as well as a few that are actually doing it right. If you're new here, I am Mattis. I make men's beauty content. I used to be a London-based makeup artist, working with amazing brands like Chanel, Dior, and MAC. I learned lots of backstage male model makeup tips that I'm now sharing with you in my content. So if you're interested in that, make sure to follow me on the other platforms and say hi in the comments. Now get yourself a drink, relax, and we'll begin. Chapter 1. The branding problem. Now, because there's such a stigma against men wearing makeup, and in most Western cultures, makeup is considered something feminine and therefore something negative. Most men's makeup brands try to almost hide the fact that they are selling makeup. There always seems to be this desperate attempt to try to not seem gay or in any way feminine. The branding is always making heavy use of black and neutral colors. They always seem to be super simplistic, but to the point where there's no design or innovation, leading to this packaging that is very subpar and feels quite average. It doesn't stand out, it doesn't look interesting, it's not selling itself. They then combine this with this branding that is specifically targeted towards straight men. One brand that sort of is the epitome of men's makeup brands and that sort of branding is War Paint. You know, it's aggressive, it has aggression in the name. It's not something silly, it's not something fun and something that might be considered feminine. It's essential and you need it in order to go out there and fight. Because historically, that's sort of this idea of a man. A man goes to war, a man feeds the family. It's very old-fashioned thinking, and it's also what makes these brands so cringe. You know, they're trying to innovate, they're trying to sell us the idea that men can wear makeup, which at least in very recent history seems innovative. Of course, if we look back in history, we see time and time again that this is not true and that makeup has been worn by men throughout history. It's an interesting dynamic. On one hand, you have this really simple packaging design. Everything is very muted, everything is kind of boring. And then on the other hand, you have this quite aggressive language. But because they're sort of not going all the way, it's just sort of bland. It sort of lands in the middle. It's not interesting, it's not desirable. You know, there's no aspirational aspect. And therefore it just gets sort of lost in the mix, and there are far more interesting makeup brands out there to consider. The key point really is that these brands are not standing out innovation or packaging wise. Besides being branded as makeup for men, there's nothing really interesting about these brands. You know, at the end of the day, makeup is about beauty, even if it is for a man. It is about beauty, and beauty is very closely tied to vanity, that wish to feel good about ourselves, the wish to feel attractive, the wish to go out there and feel confident and pretty much get laid. It's also about the desire for luxury, for living a great life. But these brands are not really targeting those emotions. They're not really selling the idea that putting on one of their products makes you look more attractive. There's no sense of desire for luxury, for feeling beautiful things, for being surrounded by elevated design. They're just a bit bland. Now, if you're not going through the aspirational route as a brand, you could of course consider a more relatable route. But because these brands are sort of crippled by this heteronormative anxiety, they're not really showing that emotion, those feelings that you can have as a man, not to be keeping up, not to look good enough, to suffer from skin issues, to want to have something to cover up those issues. Men are under a lot of pressure and they have feelings. And these makeup brands would have the opportunity to tap into those feelings, tap into those insecurities. But instead they try to sort of act
manly,
but not in a desirable way. It's neither relatable nor desirable. So it's sort of in between, and that's the issue. Chapter number 2. Who are they even targeting? Most of these men's makeup brands really only target straight men. But that's exactly the same group that is most resistant to makeup. In my personal experience, queer men such as trans men, gay men, are often a lot more curious and open about makeup. And quite frankly, we often care more about looking good. But so many of these brands actually completely exclude those groups, and sometimes they even make fun of them. And by ignoring queer men, I think these brands are pretty much missing out on the very people that could make them successful. You know, true inclusivity is not just having a little rainbow in June. It's a full-on strategy. These straight men will never fully embrace you because they have so much baggage. They have so much anxiety around self-expression, seeming gay, etc. So at least in the current market, with the current culture, in my opinion, just targeting straight men just is not gonna go anywhere. Which kind of opens up a question that I'm gonna try to really answer at the end, which is there even a point to have a men's makeup brand? Or should just all brands be for everyone? And of course all brands should be for everyone. For a brand to specifically mock and exclude a specific group is first up just awful, and secondly bad business. I do believe there is a point of having a target audience, you know, an audience that you specifically try to speak to in your marketing, while not excluding a wider group. Because that can really inform how you design, how you speak in your marketing. It can just make the product and the whole experience more polished and more exciting. But just be sure to basically not be a dickhead and make fun of others. At the end of the day, it's really not that hard. Just because one brand has a certain vision doesn't mean that people who are not aligned with that are worse. We can all coexist and express ourselves in our own unique ways, and that's fine. And yes, you can have a specific style. You don't need to go all bright colors and go all out with the makeup. You can keep it very minimal. You can keep it natural looking. That's actually the makeup style I personally love and prefer. And you can still create shades for all different skin tones. These brands are also often pretty bad at including people of color. And the whole thing just leaves a bad taste. Because if you are a makeup brand that's specifically targeting men, you are sort of the underdog if your target audience is already quite a small group. You know, men that are actually open and receptive to makeup. That's comparatively a smaller target audience than women, many of which are much more open to wearing makeup. So why would you then go and even further reduce your target audience? Chapter 3. Do we even need men's makeup brands? Now, some of you might argue, why do we need a men's makeup brand? Why not just use what's already out there? And shouldn't all brands just cater to everyone? And sure, many of us just ignore the branding or choose to ignore the branding of certain brands and just buy the products that they like. But I do think there's actually value in having products that are specifically formulated for men. Now, of course, skin is skin and men and women can use the same skincare, but there are sort of unique differences. There are things like having facial hair that might not work as well with certain products. Men often have more textured skin. That's not always the case. Some men take really good care of themselves. They often have hair even on their cheeks like I do. I get hair even up here. There's certain products that don't work as well if there's not a foundation base underneath. There's certain makeup products that are just more suited for full glam looks and don't work quite as well if the goal is to have a very natural, subtle effect. And I'm trying not to generalize here, but many men prefer a very natural look. So having color makeup that is quite intense in color doesn't always work for a very natural look. Now, I can only really speak from my own experience, but oftentimes I try to find those specific nudes that work for my skin tone. I'm not really interested in red lipstick, in pink lipstick, in really bright pink blush. I'm looking specifically for those very beautiful neutral tones, for nudes, maybe even a slightly sunburnt red. But if there was a brand that would consider all these specific needs and have these really beautiful natural tones, I think there would be a huge value in that. You also have to think that many men might be beginners at makeup. They might not have the time or the experience to try to dig through masses and masses of different colors and formulas that might not be for them. On the other hand, you might argue there are those brands that specifically target an audience that want a more natural, subtle look. The beauty brand Merit is one that comes to my mind. So I can sort of see both arguments, that a men's makeup brand might have value, but it's also not necessary. I'd love to know what you think. If you think we should have men's makeup brands or all brands should be for everyone. Tell me in the comments and we'll gather our thoughts and sort of come up with an answer at the end of the video. Chapter 4. Examples of men's makeup brands. The first one that came to my mind when creating this list was actually Warpaint. So at least they're doing something right, because it kind of stayed top of mind for me because of their aggressive name. Now, I'm just speaking from my own observations. I know that they used to sell at John Lewis in London, but from my research I couldn't find them anywhere on their website, so I'm not sure if they're still selling there. I only really swatched the formulas a few years ago on my hands when I was in the store, and from my memory they seemed pretty off in color. The bronzers were really orange leaning and the shade range was really limited. Looking at the packaging now, you know, it's quite average. It doesn't stand out, which is probably their goal. it's just not exciting, it's not interesting to me at least. And yeah, the overall impression, is quite straight, it's practical, and it's just not for me personally. Then there's Boy de Chanel, which is sort of a subsegment of Chanel as a beauty brand. And here at least the packaging feels a bit more elevated. And because it's Chanel, because it's a luxury house, there is more desirability for many. But again, the problems we see are the inclusivity, the super limited shade range. Also, you still have to consider that many men are still beginners at makeup, and such a high price point might be quite intimidating and off-putting for someone who hasn't really spent money on makeup before. Now, I have tried the foundation and I did really like it in the past, but the range pretty much gets boring really quickly because there's only a foundation, a brow pencil, and a clear lip balm or something. There's nothing really innovative and exciting. So I think it's kind of cool that it exists, but I think that could be done so much more. Another brand that comes to mind is Tom Ford, because I believe they had a men's concealer in the past and maybe some other products, but it sort of has drifted away and I'm not sure if it still exists. Other brands that I've seen around are Shake Up Cosmetics and Strix, both of which are, again, quite minimal in their packaging and approach, not quite as aggressive as War Paint, but just really safe and blah. Something that is interesting is that I've never seen anyone use these products online. And that pretty much goes for most makeup brands for men. At least for me, and I might be in my own bubble, but I don't see anyone talking about these brands. Why are these brands not sending product to influencers? Why is there no gifting? Why is no one using them? Because in today's beauty industry, I feel like if you are not online, if you are not seen, if you are not used by influencers, that's pretty much your death sentence. In order to be competitive and keep up, you need to have some viral moments. And I've never seen that for any of these men's makeup brands. Can you think of any specifically men's makeup product that has gone viral in the last few years? Now, there is actually a brand that is sort of doing some things right, and it's called Obayaty. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it, but this is a brand that, in my opinion, feels quite desirable. Now, the packaging is actually something I've not really seen before. It's not quite so gender specific. It feels elevated, and that seems to be the style they go for, quite elevated branding. They choose really beautiful models, but they're also inclusive in the way that they target queer people too. Now, I actually would love to try these formulas because the whole branding and packaging just seems beautiful. But what I will say is, I've not really seen any influencers talk about these. I've seen them in articles on GQ or Men's Health online. I've seen their Instagram presentation and their website, but I've never really seen them on an actual influencer. And that's sort of the question I have. Why are you not sending your products out to more people? It feels almost a little bit sterile, where in my mind, it seems like they're only trying to target models. People are already perfect and really rich. So it's very far on the aspiration spectrum. There's no real relatability to it, there's no warmth, there's no context. There's just a piece missing. When you see one of your favorite influencers use a product, not saying that influencer marketing is the best thing there is, but that's just what I've been missing. I've never seen anyone use these products, and personally I have actually reached out to the brands quite a while ago and asked if there would be a possibility for a gifting so I could try and showcase these products, and the brand sadly declined, which is totally fine. It's completely up to them, but it just makes me think that that approach again is quite exclusive. It's good to have a sense of who you are as a brand and who you want to target, but you still need to send out your product and have influencers try it and show it. The price of these products, again, is really high. So unless you see someone use this product and talk about how to use it, talk about the different shades and show you up close, I just don't see anyone spending that kind of money on products. And even myself, who is super interested in beauty and likes to try pretty much everything, I've still not ordered one of their products, even though I really would like to. If there are any other men's makeup brands that come to your mind, please let me know about them. And if there are any good products out there that are specifically designed for men, please let me know if you love them, why you love them, and if I should try them. Chapter 5, the price point problem. Now, this I already touched on, but it is important. Many men's makeup brands are priced ultra high luxury, and that can be really intimidating for beginners, especially if they don't know what to do with these products. At the same time, the packaging should still be desirable and needs to be high quality. So I think a sort of mid to slightly upper mid pricing would be best. Something that feels expensive but doesn't scare people away. Chapter 6, examples of men's makeup products. Now this is me giving away free advice to brands that maybe I should keep to myself. But yeah, these are products that I would love brands to come out with if they are specifically targeting men. First up, contour can be so enhancing if the goal is to bring out men's bone structures and masculine features. So if I were to have a makeup brand, this would be one of the first products to launch, and it would come in a wide shade range. Also, you need to make sure that these formulas are not too thick and heavy so that they don't get caught in facial hair. Next up, skin tints. I think a great sheer skin tint with SPF and great skincare ingredients would be so good to have for pretty much every man. Again, be aware of facial hair and make sure that the product is not too shiny. A sort of hydrating matte finish I think would be great. Next up, brow products. Brow products really are the pillars of the face. They can add so much structure to the face. So a really fine brow pen that can mimic actual brow hairs would be ideal, as well as having a strong hold brow gel that doesn't deposit too much color would be incredible. Now this is all I'm gonna say for now. Of course there's many more ideas, but I don't want to give away everything for free. Of course, if you are a makeup brand and you are seeking advice, I might be open to working together sometime. Chapter 7. What would the ideal men's makeup brand look like? The ideal men's makeup brand, in my opinion, would be high-end but accessible. The packaging would be well designed and stand out and feel like something you want to treasure, not to hide away. The ideal men's makeup brand would of course be inclusive and would include and champion gay men, trans men, and people of color. This brand would work together with amazing influencers that would make the products really desirable and really show them off. A big focus should be put on working with creators that feel trustworthy. And above all, this brand should feel like something you want to own, something that makes you feel proud to own it. Not like something you need to hide away when guests come over or you're at the gym and you need a quick touch-up. Now personally, I'm excited to see what men's makeup brands have to offer in the future. So far, I am a little bit disappointed in them, but I also remain hopeful. Do I think they have a right to exist and there should exist men's makeup brands? Yes, I do think so. Cis men and trans men have unique needs when it comes to their skin and how they want to express themselves. The ideal brand would make it so much more easy and accessible for these groups to benefit from and enjoy makeup. Now I really want to ask you, have you tried any makeup brands, and if so, which ones? What do you think of their ways of communication and branding? How would your ideal men's makeup brand look and what products would it feature? Thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited to see you in the comments. Until then, bisous bisous, yours truly.